You kill a 1,200-pound animal. Congratulations, you just solved your food problem for today. Now here's the actual problem. That much meat will start rotting within hours in warm weather, and you have no fridge, no freezer, and no ice unless you happen to live somewhere cold. So how did ancient humans, for literally hundreds of thousands of years, keep meat edible for weeks, months, sometimes over a year, using nothing but fire, salt, air, and time? The answer isn't one trick. It's several overlapping techniques, and some of them are so effective we're still using them today, thousands of years later, mostly unchanged. Why meat rots in the first place. Before the how, you need the why. Meat spoils because bacteria, yeast, and mold need moisture to grow, and fresh meat is packed with it. Every preservation method ancient humans developed, whether they understood the science or not, does the exact same fundamental thing. It removes water, blocks oxygen, or creates an environment bacteria can't survive in. They didn't know what bacteria were, but through generations of trial and error, watching what worked and what made people sick, they built a surprisingly complete toolkit for beating spoilage. Drying. The oldest and simplest method is drying, and it's probably close to 100,000 years old. Cut meat into thin strips, hang it in sun and wind, or near a low fire, and the water content drops low enough that bacteria simply can't grow anymore. This is essentially the ancestor of what we now call jerky. Different climates produced different versions of this. In hot, arid regions, sun drying alone was often enough. In humid or colder regions, people combined drying with smoke, which brings us to the next method, because plain air drying wasn't reliable enough on its own. Smoking. Smoking meat over a fire does two jobs at once. The heat continues the drying process, and the smoke itself contains natural compounds like phenols that are genuinely antibacterial and antioxidant. This wasn't guesswork. Communities that consistently smoked their meat had food that lasted noticeably longer than communities that didn't. And that observation got passed down and refined for thousands of years. Indigenous peoples across North America perfected this into what's often called pemmican, dried and pounded meat mixed with rendered fat and sometimes berries, compressed into dense cakes that could last for years and travel enormous distances without spoiling. It's essentially one of the first high-density survival foods in human history. Salting salt might be the single most important preservation tool in ancient history, and it works through a process called osmosis. Salt draws water out of meat and out of any bacteria trying to live in it, essentially dehydrating microbes to death at a cellular level. Packed correctly, salted meat can last for months, sometimes over a year, without refrigeration. Salt was so critical to survival that entire economies were built around it. Roman soldiers were sometimes partially paid in salt, which is very likely where the word salary comes from. Trade routes formed specifically to move salt from mines and coastal salt pans to inland populations who had meat but no way to preserve it long-term without it. Controlling salt access, in a very real sense, meant controlling how long a population could survive without fresh food. Fermentation? This is the method that surprises people the most because it sounds like it should make meat worse, not better. Fermentation uses beneficial bacteria and controlled acidity to outcompete the harmful bacteria that cause spoilage. Certain cultures developed fermented meat and fish products where the fermenting process itself became the preservation method, and in many cases, a specific delicacy. Scandinavian surströmming, fermented herring, is probably the most infamous modern survivor of this tradition, still made using methods that trace back thousands of years. It smells aggressive, but the fermentation process is genuinely why it doesn't spoil the way fresh fish would. This wasn't unique to one region either. Fermented fish sauces were a dietary staple across ancient Rome, ancient Southeast Asia, and multiple other cultures independently, all arriving at a similar solution without contact with each other. Cold, where it was available. Not every ancient culture had to invent chemistry-based solutions. Some just had geography on their side. In colder climates, people used natural ice, packed snow, or underground cellars called ice houses to keep meat cold for extended periods. Some early ice houses, dug deep enough to stay insulated from surface heat, could preserve ice, and the food packed alongside it well into summer months. This is really the same core idea modern refrigeration is built on, just using nature's cold instead of mechanical cold. In a real sense, we didn't invent refrigeration from nothing. We industrialized something ancient humans were already doing with ice pits and cellars. Why this matters? Here's the bigger picture. Meat preservation wasn't just about convenience, it was one of the technologies that made large-scale human civilization possible. Preserved meat let hunting parties travel farther without needing to return immediately. It let communities survive winters and droughts when fresh food wasn't available. It allowed armies to march for months and traders to move goods across entire continents. Every single technique we've covered today, drying, smoking, salting, fermenting, and cold storage, is still used in commercial food production right now. We didn't replace ancient food science, we scaled it up. So next time you eat beef jerky, cured bacon, smoked salmon, or even a hot dog, you're eating the direct descendant of survival technology that's tens of thousands of years old. We like to think of preservation as a modern convenience. It's actually one of humanity's oldest inventions and arguably one of the reasons we made it this far at all. Which of these methods would you have wanted to figure out first? Drop it in the comments. I read everyone. And if you're into this kind of deep dive, the Göbekli Tepe video is right here.